All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of the Jake Fletcher Show podcast. I'm here to talk to you guys today about the importance of impacting others by example versus telling people what they should do or what they need to do. All right, so we often think of this in terms of leading by example, which is a part of this concept, but the overall concept is bigger than that because it's also used outside of leadership scenarios where it could involve your personal relationships, your relationships with friends, business relationships, your kids, all kinds of things where this shows up in life, okay? So impacting others by example versus telling people what they should do or what they need to do. So this kind of first cropped up in my mind in my early 20s. I had a friend who he would always tell people, don't tell me what I should do, which the way he said it was kind of joking and it was funny, but it was also, it rang true with me as well because, on a very base level, it's almost odd, I feel, to tell another adult what they should do. Because really, as adults, we should be able to figure out what we want to do ourselves. Now, this obviously precludes any situation or, leaves out any situation where you're going to somebody for advice or you're going to somebody for their expertise. Of course, that's a whole separate thing. This is talking about mainly when you're in a scenario with others, whether you're in a leadership role or you're working for a company where you have a leader involved, or if you're in any type of relationship, whether it's interpersonal or a love life relationship, and really the basis of this whole concept is minute differences in how we approach things. And most people don't really hone in on it so much where they'll be able to tell if you're impacting by example or if you're trying to impact people by telling them what they should do. It's kind of more of a subconscious thing. But these subconscious things, they add up and they leave people with an impression of who we are, which is why it's important for us to be aware of how we're doing things and the interpretation that we're giving to other people of ourselves. And really, it goes a lot deeper than that too, because it also has to do with not just how others perceive us, but how we perceive ourselves. It goes back to even that base level. So let's jump into it here. So on the little board behind me, I don't know how easy it is to see. Let's see if we can bring it a little closer there. So the first little point there, I've got these 6 different points, basically kind of like how to impact people by example. But first I wanted to say that I've tried to eliminate the word should from my vocabulary when talking to other people. It started with that friend that I told you guys about, but it's developed over time as I've come to understand this topic more. Now, the reason why I try to avoid that, and even in real estate, I try to avoid telling my clients what they should do. I'll tell them, hey, look, I'm not here to tell anybody what they should do. I'll tell you what I would do personally, and you can take from that what you will, but I'm not here to tell people what they should do or shouldn't do, right? I'm here to provide information and you make the best decision for yourself, right? Now that's for multiple reasons. As an agent, we want to avoid putting unnecessary liability onto ourselves. So for example, if I say, oh, you should use this termite inspector, and then that termite inspector does a terrible job and they buy a house that's full of termites, and then they're looking at me like, yo, you said I should have used this person, right? And then on the other side of it, we also want to help guide our clients, right? It's kind of the teach a man to fish versus give him a fish, or however that allegory is. You want to arm people with the skills and the knowledge that they'll have for the rest of their life, that's going to carry them on to other situations and be beneficial to them forever, not just you helping them that one time. Okay, so that's like really the main reason why I've tried to eliminate this word from my vocabulary, should, right, or shouldn't. And let's talk about it some more. So the first point there, be true to your word and expectations of others, okay? So that's going to really help to build trust between you and other people, right? And again, remember, this is whether you're in a leadership position or these are just regular random relationships that you have with people or even with strangers. So being true to your word means so many things. It means obviously being honest, but it also means doing what you say you're going to do. And then the being true to your expectations of others, meaning don't tell someone to do something that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself, right? So if I went on and I said, hey, look, all you realtors out there, you need to, go knock on 100 doors a day for a month. That's something I've done, right? So I have the ability to say, hey, do this or don't do this if you want X results, right? Now, that would be when somebody is coming to me, coming to my channel, to my videos for information, for advice. I'm not showing up to my office, to people's desks and telling them that they should do that, right? So that's going back to that difference, right? Now, being true to your word and expectations of others also will show up in terms of like if you come up with rules within your household or your organization, make sure you follow those rules as well, okay? Don't say, hey, guys, every Tuesday we're going to clean the house, and then Tuesday comes and you're nowhere to be found, right? So be accountable, be true to your word and your expectations of others, and you'll help to build other people's trust in you, okay? So that's going to help you to come off as trustworthy, reliable, honest, and people will more likely listen to the things that you say, and they will more likely be willing to kind of take your examples and pick up on them and apply them to their own life, right? So that's ultimately what you want if you are trying to be a leader or if you're trying to influence other people, or just trying to be an effective communicator and, a likable person, essentially. So, the more you build that trust, the more people are going to kind of gravitate towards you versus if you are somebody who is, they're always telling other people to do something, but they never do it themselves, right? Everybody knows somebody like that. And it leaves people thinking, well, if they didn't do it, why do I have to do it, right? Instead of being that person, you'll be somebody who they, like I said, gravitate towards, and they're going to want to kind of do things in a way that they know that you'll approve of those things, right? Now that's more so in a leadership position than your interpersonal relationships. But in your interpersonal relationships, building that trust with people where they see you as somebody who is always accountable to their word, then that's going to just plain old give you better relationships with people. I mean, people are going to be able to come to you with their issues and talk to you. And when you come to them with your issues, they'll be more willing to hear you out and so forth, because in their eyes, you aren't that hypocrite person. You're the person who they trust, right? So building that trust is just so instrumental to this whole idea of impacting or influencing other people by example versus your words, right? Now, the second point here on my lovely dry erase board is do the hard work, right? So this kind of goes in hand with the expectations of others, right? Don't tell people to do something you wouldn't do. Also, likewise, along that same vein, when other people see you kind of knee deep or elbows deep, getting your hands dirty and doing something, it gives you a certain credibility on the topic that you wouldn't otherwise have, right? So I could go into a Hollywood studio and start telling people how to direct movies. Nobody's ever seen me direct a movie and do that before. So they'd be like, who the hell is this guy, right? But then on the other hand, when Steven Spielberg walks in, this is somebody who has that esteem, that rapport, that people know this guy, he's done it a million times. And we can, again, go back to trust that person, that what they say and what they do and how they're doing it is the way that it should be done, right? So doing that hard work is also instrumental in building that trust, having people see you as the person who is, is really going to be there to make sure something gets done, that you're not just going to let the slack fall off onto them and make other people do the work that you're supposed to do. Or if it's work, this is the flip side, if it's work that other people are supposed to do and they don't do it, you do it, right? So you're ultimately, in charge of making sure things in your life happen, right? Or don't happen. So if other people are dropping the ball and you also drop the ball, birds of a feather, right? It makes you know better. But if other people drop the ball and without missing a beat, you pick it back up and slam dunk it, then people are going to also take notice of that, and they're going to see that example that you've created, and they might apply that to their life, which is going to give them better results. And if you're part of a team or something like that, it'll give everybody better results, and that is going to kind of cause a little bit of a ripple effect. Okay. Now, the next point is be solution focused, right? Everybody knows a finger pointer, right? Everybody knows somebody who, when times get rough or when things aren't so cut and dry, straightforward or so forth, they'll start to point their fingers. Oh, well, so-and-so did this, right? They start the blame game. Oh, well, you said this, but, you didn't, then you did this, right? You did the thing that you said that not to do, right? That's not the way we want to go about things, right? We want to be focused on the solutions, not on the problems, okay? So you're a team leader in that example, continuing that, right? Somebody says, oh, I'm going to get the report to you on Monday or whatever, right? Well, Monday comes and the report's not there. Do you show up to their desk wagging their finger? Hey, you said you were going to get the report. What happened, right? No, the better route is to show up, say, hey, look, we want to have the report by X time. What can we do to make sure that happens, right? So always be solution focused versus problem oriented, okay? This is something I also apply in my real estate business, because real estate is full of all kinds of unexpected hurdles in the process of a transaction, and all kinds of things can happen. And it's a very emotional process for buyers and sellers. So what I've learned is that, some people have more of a natural tendency to want to focus on problems. And in those circumstances, especially, you want to be solution focused, because it takes that energy that's going towards honing in and focusing on everything that's wrong, and it redirects that energy towards finding a way around it, a solution, something that's going to fix that issue, right? So when you do that, when you have that type of mentality of being solution focused versus problem oriented, then you are going to make a huge impact on other people, because you won't be that person who's always coming up with everything that's wrong, right? You'll be the person who has the solutions to the problem, right? You're the problem solver at that point in time, okay? It's definitely, nobody likes the person, right, who is always talking about everything that's wrong, okay? That's another piece of this. It doesn't even necessarily have to be that you're in a team and there's these things that are going wrong and you're coming up with solutions how to fix them. It can also just be in everyday life, like, oh my God, I can't believe it's raining. Ugh, everybody knows the complainer, right? So instead of that complaining mentality, focus on the positive things, right? Oh man, it's raining. It'd be a great day to go X, right? So fill in the blank with what that means to you in your life. But the point of it is that we want to be solution focused above all else. Identify the problem and directly after that, switch into coming up with the solution. Don't spend any more time than you absolutely have to identify that problem, okay? Now, the next thing on the list is to truly listen to others, all right? Now, this might seem like a passive thing, but listening is actually active. I've done things in the past. I did a video, or maybe it was a podcast that I did in the past about the difference between hearing and listening, right? Hearing is when you're technically the sounds someone else is creating is entering your brain, but instead of processing what they're saying and overlaying it onto your current information and informing your point of view and allowing that to shift your perspective or better inform your perspective, you're sitting there formulating what you're going to reply with, right? This is one of the most common things in society that I personally notice all the time that people do, where they aren't really listening to people. They don't really even know how to listen to other people. All they know how to do is hear. And the best way to tell that somebody is doing that is there's no space, there's never ever any space between what you just said and what they say, right? As soon as you're done talking, boom, they jump in with something they were sitting there waiting to say while you were talking, right? That's one of the first giveaways, right? So there's other ways, of course, to tell, but this video is not about that. This is about how truly listening can impact others by example. So people see that active listening, they experience that active listening, they can tell when you're listening to them, right? And when you can tell somebody's really truly listening to you and they're engaged with the conversation and they're asking you follow-up questions that are directly relevant to what you just said, and they're digging deeper into the subject with you and really connecting with you, that gives you a sense of ease with that person, right? This is a classic tool in sales, right? We want to kind of, there's a technique in sales of repeating what somebody says. So they say, oh yeah, I'm looking for a single family home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, $450,000 or less. Okay, cool. Single family home, 3.2, 450 or less. Got it. What kind of areas are you looking in, right? So what I did there is I regurgitated what they said to confirm the details of what they said, but also subconsciously to let them know, hey, I was listening to what you say. What you say has value to me, right? And so people subconsciously will pick up on that, and it paints you in a better light, right? And it paints you in a way where people say, that person is totally different, or they're a lot different than a lot of other people, because most people don't do this, right? So when you do this, eventually people will either consciously or subconsciously pick up on it. And that is definitely beneficial to you, whether you're in a leadership position, in a business, or just in your own relationships, right? So the next thing on the list is to build up, don't break others down. So this is something that is a little bit tougher for people to do who are the complainers, right? If you're already not instantly solution focused, right? If you have a tendency to complain, which who doesn't, right? Everyone complains. Nobody doesn't complain. But if you are someone who tends to complain more than others, this is a tougher one for you, all right? Now, the premise behind this is you want to encourage other people, even when they fail, to keep going. You want to celebrate the things they did right, celebrate the things they did wrong that you can learn from. Hey, this didn't work out, but we just learned X, Y, and Z from that. That's great. So now moving forward, we always have that knowledge, right? So celebrate those things, point out the silver linings of any clouds, and encourage people, because for every one thing that you say nice to somebody, they'll remember 5 things that you said that were negative, right? So you really need to make sure to kind of tread that line in a way that you're leaving that person with a good taste in their mouth, right? Everybody knows the person who all they do is point out what's wrong about other people, or what's wrong about what other people are doing or saying, or all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, that just makes them look bad, right? Because even if the things that they're saying are true or not true, what kind of positive contribution does that leave to the world? How does that improve your situation to be sitting here trashing other people, whether it's merited or not? So on the opposite side of that, when you build people up, right, you're not only encouraging people and then getting better results. If you're on a team, you also getting better results from them and collectively as your team, but you're also illuminating yourself as a good guy, right? You're illuminating yourself as a confidant, building a friendship with people. This is a great way to build friendships with people. And you're doing so in a way that's authentic, not superficial. Like, oh my God, I love your shirt, man. Like, if you do really love their shirt, that's fine to say, but it's a more authentic level of connection with people versus just superficially complimenting people. You're identifying real things that have happened or maybe didn't happen, and you're saying, hey, you know what? However that ended up going, you did great. I'm really proud of you, and I think that you're fantastic. I think you did a great job, et cetera, et cetera. And you're helping that person to feel better about themselves, right? Which is going to be better for everybody involved, and you're potentially, creating a relationship with somebody that will then, make you look better in return, bring other opportunities to you, and just in general paint you in a good light to where anytime your name is spoken when you're not around, those people are going to be like, oh yes, such and such, like he's the man, she's the bomb, blah, 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 right? And, that's something that if it's happening, then you know that you've impacted other people by example, right? And you did it by, showing them, hey, this is how I encourage people. This is how I treat people. This is how I make people feel, versus telling them how they should do those things, right? So great tool to implement no matter what situation you're in. Here's a little exercise to do. Next time you're about to identify something to somebody that they did wrong, think of a way to say it where before you bring up the thing they did wrong, you compliment them or encourage them about something that they did right. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm on a real estate team and I'm the team lead and I have a buyer's agent and he didn't follow up with somebody and we lost a deal. So we'll call him Jimmy. So we'll say, oh, Jimmy, hey, I love what you're doing, man. I think you're doing fantastic. Working with buyers is a really tough thing to do, and you really handle it awesomely. And I admire your enthusiasm, and I admire your approach to what you do. And, I was thinking, due to the fact that, we lost Mrs. Johnson, maybe going forward, let's take a look at our approach to follow-ups and let's see if we might be able to tweak some things around the edges to do a little bit better job of following up next time. Does that work? Right? So that's not, by any means is that perfect. I'm literally pulling that out of thin air right now, but you get the point, right? Instead of immediately, yo, Jimmy, what happened with Miss Johnson? You didn't follow up, right? Instead of that, I'm making him feel good. Hey, man, I really appreciate how you work with these buyer's agents. I think you do great. Seeing as how we did lose Miss Johnson, what do you think about maybe tweaking some things around the edges, da-da-da-da-da? In which scenario do you think I'm going to get a better reaction from that buyer's agent, from Jimmy, right? So, building people up, don't break them down. The last thing here on this list is emphasize your health, well-being, and self-development, right? So you've probably heard, you can't love other people unless you love yourself. Well, kind of along that same line of thinking, how can you expect to leave a good, lasting impact on people, right, if you can't even take care of yourself, right? If you don't feel good physically, mentally, if you're not progressing in the world, how can you expect others to do so, right? So that almost should have been number one on the list, but this isn't in any particular order. But that's super important because that's really where it all starts, man. I mean, even if you don't have to be the pinnacle of health. I mean, I'm by no means am I an Olympic athlete or something, but I feel good about my health. I feel good about my well-being and where my head is at. I feel good about the path I'm on with my self-development. Am I 100% in any of those categories? Hell no, right? But am I always constantly working on those things and getting better and making sure that I feel better, this week than last week or last month? Yeah, you better believe it, right? Because I take that very seriously. And because I do, that puts me in a headspace where I can communicate with people in a way that I don't feel, oh, our light went out, so that I don't feel like, it puts me in a headspace where I can communicate with people in a way that's more positive, in a way that I can leave people feeling like with a good taste in their mouth, versus like I walk away and they're like, man, what a dick, right? Like Maya Angelou said that people won't remember the things that you say and do, but they'll always remember the way that you made them feel, right? Kind of paraphrasing it, I don't know if that's the exact quote, but that's pretty much it, right? People always remember the way you make them feel. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. You want to make people feel the way that is going to get the results that you want as a team leader or as a parent or a friend or so forth. You want to make people feel in a way that they're going to do things or say or act in a way that is in alignment with who you are, what you believe, your core values and principles, right? Especially if this is somebody who you intend to be around, right? And who is going to end up being a reflection on you, right? So, and of course, the bottom line of all that is this is actually better for the other person too. All these things benefit us, yes, but ultimately it starts out with something that benefits the other person, right? So it doesn't start with a self-centered motivation. It starts with, hey, look, I want to get the best results. Whether it's the best results from me, the best results from you, the best results from our team, the best results from your kids, from your relationships, friends, wife, husband, whatever it is, right? You want to get the best possible results, okay? So yeah. Now on the next side of my little board here, I have a few reasons that, a few things adding on to this concept. Can you see it? Maybe not. Let me move it closer. So, trust, not hypocrisy, builds character strength. Learn to self-reflect, not project. Fear versus respect, and accountability. Okay, so these are some of the results of impacting others by example. So like we were talking about, you build a level of trust with people. Whereas if you don't impact others by example, you're always telling people what to do and not do and so forth. And then if you don't stay true with that, then you're instantly a hypocrite in their eyes, right? So like, for example, let's think of an example. Let's say Martin Luther King Jr., who was famous for espousing the belief of nonviolent protest. Well, if he had gone out in a protest and starts hurling Molotov cocktails at the police, the next time he goes out to protest, you're gonna have a hard time believing, this dude telling you to be nonviolent, right? Because the other day was lobbing Molotov cocktails, right? So this level of trust and congruency with your word, with your own personal word, is super, super important, because otherwise you'll ultimately end up coming off as a hypocrite, right? Now, the next thing here builds character strength. So the very act in and of itself of impacting others by example versus impacting them by your telling them what to do, order, right? declaration, is in and of itself an act that will build your character strength, right? Because this is getting out of that id level mentality of, always thinking about things from like a me perspective. And like I call it flipping the script, right? It's often, you hear that term in other uses, but I use it more broadly to say, you often can make things better in life by adding another level of thought, or another level of, not necessarily complexity, but adding on to something, developing something a little bit further. Oh, here's our light. Is it on? Hey. So the act of going from somebody who is, let's say, a finger pointer to somebody who now is going to stop and think, okay, instead of me just pointing the finger at people, let me think about a way that I can say what I want to say, but in a way that encourages people and it leaves people feeling good, or even motivates them to do what it is that I'm looking for them to do. That is something in and of itself, because you're taking that extra step of thought and care, is going to build your character strength, right? Also, being true to your word builds your character strength, right? Doing the hard work, being willing to get your, roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty builds character strength, right? So all these things ultimately will be, rungs in the ladder towards developing yourself, developing your character, and becoming a person of stronger character. Okay. So learn to self-reflect, not project. So many times in this world, all you have to do is look out your front window and people just project, right? Everyone's guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. So go ahead and accept it. But what we want to do is we want to learn to self-reflect rather than project, because all projecting is we're putting out into the world, onto someone else, what we see in ourselves, and we aren't willing to admit it. We aren't willing to recognize it, right? So instead of that act of projecting, like, let's see, Jimmy, I can't believe that you didn't follow up with Ms. Johnson, right? Continuing our example of that team leader and buyer's agent. I can't believe you didn't follow up, man. How could you do that, right? Instead of that team leader can think to themselves, have I ever forgotten to follow up with a lead before? Yeah, if you're a realtor, you have forgotten to follow up with somebody before. unless it's, week one or something like that. Everyone's done it. Everybody's forgotten to follow up with somebody, right? So now I'm coming from a place of empathy rather than a place of, projecting my disdain, my feeling of not being happy with the things that somebody else has done, instead of projecting onto them my own insecurity about the fact that I've also dropped the ball with people in the past. I'm coming to them with a empathetic form of, hey, look, man, I know we lost Miss Johnson. That totally sucks. I can totally relate. I've been there before. I've been busy as well. I feel you. Is there anything I can do to help you out? What can we do in the future to tweak things around the edges to make sure it doesn't happen again, right? So now, you could go further into that example, but now just right off the rip, instead of coming with my finger pointed and accusing and so on and so forth, and ultimately what I'm doing is putting negative emotions onto him that are inside of me. Instead, I'm starting with those negative emotions inside of me. I'm recognizing that. I'm validating my own past experience as being having some overlap with this other individual, right? And it's giving me a more informed perspective in a way that I can relate to them, and I can help them to understand where I'm coming from, because they will be able to tell that I understand where they're coming from, right? So that creates a two-way street where it's more likely that you're going to get a good result out of that person, okay? Now, the next one there, fear versus respect. I always go back to thinking about my high school wrestling coach, and I compare him to other teachers that I had. I won't, single anybody out, but Coach Haskin, the wrestling coach, he got the absolute best results that you could imagine out of his team. And he did it without ever raising his voice or making anyone fear him. Even though this dude was a badass. I mean, if you tried to challenge him, he would have just wiped the mats with you, right? So he could have put the fear of God into whoever he wanted, right? But he chose to conduct himself in a way where he led the team with respect, and in turn they respected him. We respected him, versus the teachers who they will come in and you doing something wrong, yell. Someone else is doing something wrong, send you to the principal or whatever, right? They try to lay down the law, lay down that fear, and get the results from people out of fear, right? You're never going to get better results out of somebody by conducting yourself with fear and driving fear in somebody than you are if you are eliciting respect, right? Now, respect is only given when it's earned as well. So you can't just walk in a room with a stranger and expect people to respect you right away. You've got to earn that respect. If you want them to give you respect, you have to do things that elicit respect from other people, right? And this goes back to everything else. Building that trust, not being hypocritical, right? Being true to your word, being willing to do the work that you're asking of other people, et cetera, right? So those are all things that help to build respect versus the person who comes in and they're yelling and or parents that every discipline is you're going to get whipped or spanked or whatever, or you're going to get grounded or this, that, or the other. That is an approach. It is a approach, of course, but is it a better approach than guiding by respect, right? Because when you guide by respect and you influence other people by respect, then you don't have to be there to put the fear into them anymore. They've created their own internal reward structure that you have influenced, but it's ultimately not up to you. It's up to them. They're accountable to themselves versus being accountable to your fear mongering, right? So you see, it's a very, very powerful tool to guide yourself in this way and to conduct yourself how somebody does to elicit respect versus somebody who creates fear. Okay. Now, the last thing on the list there is accountability. I mean, this is so all-encompassing of this. You will never impact other people by example or any other way if you can't be in some way accountable, right? It's a sliding scale. The more accountable you are, the more ability or capacity you have to influence people, right? If you're kind of accountable but not really, then don't expect a lot of great results. If you're always accountable to your word, if you're always accountable to your actions, if you're always accountable to your team, to your family, so on and so forth, right? Then that's another thing that subconsciously or consciously other people will notice and they will feel that, right? They will remember that about you, whether they articulate it as such or if it's just a feeling that they get about you. So, being accountable is not just with other people and your words and actions, but with yourself too, right? And going back to the other side of taking care of yourself, your health, your well-being, your self-development, etc. In order to do all those things, you have to be accountable to yourself, right? If you're unaccountable to yourself, if you just kind of let it wing, if you just kind of wing it, then you're kind of going to plateau and you're not going to progress much, right? We only progress when we dig in, we practice, we do things in a way where we're going to get better, right? That's how you progress. When you reach a plateau, you have to dig in even more to get to the next level of progression and advancement. And as you get better and better at something, it gets harder and harder to level up like that. So it's even more and more important to be accountable to yourself and to others as you progress as an individual, as a professional, and so on. Because as you're first starting out, really the only person you need to be accountable to is yourself, right? But then as you start to, have a team, or you're on a team, whatever it is, you got to be accountable to your teammates, right? You have family that depends on you. You got to be accountable to your family. You have kids, got to be accountable to your kids, to your spouse, etc., right? And without that accountability, then you lose a lot of trust. You lose a lot of trust from people, and then anything that you say to them after that is not going to hold water, right? Or not going to hold its weight, right? You're just not going to be believable, right? Like the dad who is never around and always tells their kids, "Oh, I'm going to take you to Disney World," or whatever, and then they never show up. They never take the kids to Disney World. And then, one day the dad shows up and, it's December 23rd and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to take you to Disney World on Christmas." Those kids aren't going to believe him for shit, man. Nobody's going to believe him because he never was around. He never did what he said he was going to do, right? So that's why that accountability is so important in this instance, because if you can't be accountable to yourself, to others, then you're not going to be able to impact people by your example and by your actions and the things that you say. So that is it for this podcast, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you're on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified whenever I post new videos. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Is there anything that you would want to add to this? Anything that you disagree? Let me know. Give me a thumbs up. Help me out with that algorithm. And I'll see you guys on the next one, all right? So, Jake Fletcher Show. Sell smart, buy bold. Peace.